Hi guys, welcome to another session with me, Claudia Tumba. Today we're going to be talking about choosing the right activity for your EFL or your ESL classroom. Let's get on with it. So here's my guide on how to lesson plan or how to go about your lesson planning. Number one, figure out your 7 foundation points. I think these are really important parts that as teachers we need to think about before we start to write down the detailed ideas of what tasks and activities and what things I'm going to use and what videos I'm going to choose. The next step I would like you to do is to choose your activity. Now, in the past, I used to choose the introduction. I thought that was the biggest and most important part of the class, was to have a really amazing introduction activity, get all the students excited. And while that is important, I found that if you put more energy into choosing the right activity, it really helps your students succeed. So choose your activity first, and then you think about an introduction that will help your students to understand the activity or the context within which the activity will be in. Does that make any sense? Basically, that would introduce the context so that it makes it clear where we are in the English world. Then you go on to choosing the words and the grammar expressions that your students are going to need in order to be able to do the activity. And then you think about how you're going to review everything and conclude. Things to think about. Remember, students perform the objective through the activity. They're closely linked together, which is why I think once you figured out your objective, go straight away to choosing that activity. 21st century skills. Choose activities that promote, any of the skills, at least one skill. Choose activities that are promoting 21st century skills. Offer help to each type of student, and then break down hard tasks into easier parts. Remember to work closely with Bloom's Taxonomy when you first get started. So I will encourage you to do this because it helps you, number one, to know the level of thinking that you are targeting in that lesson. And then number two, it helps you avoid always giving students the same activities in the same thinking bracket. So remembering is all about recalling information. If all of your activities are to do with this category, your students are not really going to progress. You have to, within that same topic or within that same unit, you have to be able to you have to be able to challenge your students and give them different levels of thinking. So you can't just do remembering tasks. You need to also cover understanding tasks, application tasks. Now, if you're following the textbook would definitely have different levels of thinking, but if you're not, it's good to know this. So I'm going to be introducing activities according to Bloom's Taxonomy. Number one, when it comes to remembering, I have 3 ideas. You've seen them all. None of them are new. You're going to see a lot of these, but fill in the blanks. It's a nice way for students to recall what they have learnt about the topic. Fill in the blanks. Now, one thing you're going to see, or I'm going to encourage you to do, is start writing really simple instructions. I used to write long sentences, and then I realized most textbooks just give verbs, really simple verbs. They really minimize the amount of words they're using to give the instructions. So it's nice and simple, nice and clear. Connect, trace, and write. So fill in the blanks. Students, basically fill in the blanks. Next up, we have matching exercises. Really simple. Again, really simple instruction. Look and match. We've done this. This is a helpful way for students to practice that first level of thinking. One that you might not be familiar with is the memory game. In my case, I call it the brain game. Usually what I do is I give my students 30 seconds to look at the screen, look at the pictures, and see if they can remember as many as possible. After 30 seconds, I remove the pictures, and then the students have to draw or write down what they remember. I think here I said look, remember, draw, and write. So here they have to draw and they have to write what was on the screen. If you're doing this online, I found that doing it one by one is a lot harder. So showing one picture at a time is a lot harder. And another version that you can do is you get the students to draw the picture in the exact location of what was shown on the screen. So they can't just, if the cloud was here, that's where they have to draw the cloud. They can't choose to draw it here. They wouldn't get the point for it. So it's a really great way to get your students to recall information. Level number 2 is all about showcasing their understanding of their topic. So here is something that you're going to see a lot in textbooks is comprehension questions. So after reading a text, you have really simple questions to check that they're understanding what they've read. Here's also another example. Now, different ways that you can differentiate here could be that you ask higher level learners to complete all 4 questions, whereas lower level learners do 2 questions. Now, it's not unfair. It's just giving your students the opportunity to work at their own pace. And it makes sure that everyone succeeds. Because one of the worst feelings could be that, the higher levels have finished, the lower levels you're still waiting on them, and then there's that pressure for them to finish, and then everyone is looking at them. So you have to kind of find a good balance for your class. Next up is true or false questions. Again, this is a popular method used by textbooks. So here, students are going to look at the picture, read the sentence, and then they're going to color whether it's true or whether it's false. So again, nice and simple, but checks their understandings. Guess who? This is a pair game. I think everybody's seen this before. Students are going to try and guess each other's character by asking a series of yes/no questions. All right, next up we have read and draw. So again, translating from one form to another. So here we have words. Students need to show their understanding by drawing. You can make this more complex using sentences, or even just using the new vocab that students have learned can be tricky for them as well. An extension to this could be to get your higher level learners to write 3 sentences to summarize what they've learned, and for your lower level learners to write 1 sentence. Level number 3. Here, what's really important about level number 3 is that students are going to use the information they've learned from remembering and understanding in order to apply it to new situations or to personalize it. So here are some ideas that you can use. What you will frequently see in textbooks is the use of role plays and dialogues. Highly encourage you to write the dialogues yourself, or to get your students to write the dialogues, and to make them about the student's country or about things that are, understandable to the students. For example, instead of talking about, hot dogs and French fries, in Korea, I can talk about kimbap and I don't know, what's another Korean food, that tteokbokki maybe. So I can personalize it more to my students' cultural context. It's great for students to learn about other cultures. That's also important, but it's also good to kind of celebrate their own cultures as they're studying as well. Writing sentences. So again, a great way to kind of show their application, to show that what they've been learning about is for them to write their own sentences. And you can decide how many sentences they do. You can also get them to write paragraphs as well. Again, make it culturally relevant to your students. So I'm in South Korea, so I'm going to encourage students to write about their lives, about places that are known to them. So if we're talking about location, I'm not going to write locations that will be, familiar to somebody from London. For example, Tesco's, going to Tesco's to do your grocery shopping. I'm going to talk about E-Mart or Lotte Mart, some place that is familiar to my students. As a helping hand for all students, I'm definitely going to provide graphic organizers such as mind maps, or if they're working on a paragraph, I'm going to give them a hamburger, because a hamburger is a really great way to help you write a paragraph. Next up, you've got the activity somebody who, or find someone who. Here, students are going to go around the classroom finding someone who agrees with their statement. Now, here are some written statements, already generated statements. An activity that you can do. You can do it in a different way where the students write their own sentences, or you can break it down where they only write one of their own sentences and the other ones are generated by yourself or by a textbook. So you can do it in that way. Personalize it with statements that are written by the students or by yourself. And then we have complete the comic. So here, students finish the story. What happens next? And a great way to celebrate their creativity could be to do a gallery walk. So put up all of their work around the classroom and then students stand up and go around just admiring everybody's ideas. And you're going to definitely have some wacky ideas that are super fun to play with. A lot of my students like to talk about death. Death was always a famous subject. The character always ends up dying. No matter what happened, death will always be involved. All right, next up, we've got analyzing. Now, so far we've been working with lower levels of thinking. Now we're in the big boy leagues. We're in the higher levels of thinking. This is level number 4. Here, students are going to think like engineers. They're going to break down something that already exists into its smaller parts in order to understand how everything connects. So something that you're going to see regularly in your textbook is asking the students to break down sentences. Now, this is a special way of doing it. This is the Montessori method, where each part of speech is symbolized by, a different shape and a different color. This just makes the sentence a little bit more visual. So here's how a student would use this to kind of understand the relationship between sentences. I think this is really helpful, especially for things like this, where especially in Korea, my students have a hard time remembering to add an article before the noun. And so making sure that my students understand that every time you use a big black triangle, you need a small blue triangle next to it, even if that blue triangle doesn't say anything, because sometimes the noun doesn't need any article. Next up, Venn diagrams. So here again, diagrams are going to be your best friends when it comes to level number 4. Students are going to compare and contrast daytime and nighttime. So what are the things that are similar? What are the things that are different? And you can use Venn diagrams to compare so many topics. What's the difference between England and Korea? What's the difference between vegetables and fruits? What's the difference between using the verb play and do? When it comes to sports, some sports we say play basketball, but some sports we have to say do yoga. Why? Why is that? So we can take a look at similarities and differences and understand those concepts a bit better. Here we've got grouping. Again, this is another type of chart. This is a T chart. So students are going to look at the picture and decide which ones give off light and which ones reflect light. Level number 5. Here, what we're trying to get our students to do is to share ideas, rank items based on preferences, and answer questions about judgment and about opinion. So we're getting our students to practice that. And it's important. It's important for our students not just to be accurate, but to also learn to be able to share opinions, even if those opinions are wrong. Let's take a look. So here is a task that you can do. You can do opinion-based discussion questions. So asking your students why they think something is or is not. For example, are fish and bird body parts the same? Why or why not? So whenever you have a topic, make sure you give time for the students to be able to kind of give their opinions on what they think of a topic. So you're definitely going to do colors. A great discussion topic would be to do what makes the best color to wear. I don't know. On you, to wear as clothes or to wear as shoes. When you're talking about food, what's the best dish that you've ever tasted? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. We just want our students to be able to tell us their opinions. Next up, we've got peer review or error correction. Get your students used to giving an opinion, not just on their own work, but on their friends' work in a polite and respectful way. So this is where that social 21st century skill comes in. Being able to give advice, feedback to each other in a respectful and productive kind of way. Not to criticize and break somebody down, but to empower them and encourage them. I love to use emojis and really simple sentences that I have pre-taught to my students. I can use this same worksheet as a self-evaluation and then also as a peer review just by changing the first part. So instead of saying he, she, if it's a self-review, I'm going to say I said, who will use the paper. But in this case, as a peer review, it's going to be he, she said, who will use the poster with, who will use this poster. Ranking. Here again, students tell us their favorite top fives of the different categories. An extension activity would be to do a class ultimate rank. Like this is my personal rank, but what's the class's personal ultimate list of top fives? Surveys, really helpful. And you can use this for multiple topics, right? So if you're starting out and maybe you're like, I'm unsure about what to do with evaluation, every topic do a survey if you can do. Every topic do a survey. Level number 6, this is the ultimate level, the daddy of all daddies. It's creating. So this is where the students show their ultimate level of thinking by either making something new or improving something that already exists. A great way to do this is to get your students into the habit of writing stories about every topic that they've learned. And then you can take this further by using websites like Canva or story generators, or even, there's tons of story making, book making websites that are free that you can get to use and create stories that you actually print out and have in the classrooms. This is a great way to celebrate your students. Or you can take an existing story and then combine it with your topic and see how that would, how that would pan out. For example, if we had Little Red Riding Hood and the topic of ED/ing, so talking about ED words and ING words, how would that pan out? Or if we had, Cinderella and sports, you can combine those two topics together. What would happen in that case? Next up, you have project-based learning. So getting your students to work on a project. It could be for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month, however long you decide. But here we have a really simple project that students can do within one lesson, I think, especially if you've set it up properly. Create your own flag. Another type of project, design a new game. This would work brilliantly with topics that students typically find hard within your country. For example, in Korea, my students struggle a lot with writing a and the. So we can create a game that helps them to be able to remember the rules for that. Building a better mousetrap. Again, this is another project-based learning, but here we're not creating something new, we're improving something that already exists. So this type of mousetrap is really horrible. So how can we create something that is both kind and loving towards the mouse, but also protects us, because we don't want to share our space with a mouse. And then lastly, inventing something new. So you give your students a problem and then they have to make something that solves that problem. You could make a product, or you could also get your students to provide a service. And then here's what it would look like as a final prototype. You can use things like Canva, if you have access to Photoshop, or even just hand drawing to show what the final product would look like. And so those are the 6 levels of thinking and the type of activities that you can have. Now here I wanted to show how you can use all of the 6 levels in order to create an ultimate unit. So for example, I want my students to create a new recipe with the banana as the centerpiece, as the main ingredient. I can start off with fill in the blanks to recall the vocabulary and the terminology. I can do a read and draw, maybe again of some key words or key concepts to do with cooking. Like when we're working with cooking vocabulary, I can do a read and draw for that. In application, we can try and follow a simple banana recipe, put it together. In analyzing, students can work on comparing two different types of recipes and learning what makes a good recipe, or what should we have in our recipe document. What are the good components of a recipe document? In evaluation, students can do a survey to tell me what are some of their favorite flavors or favorite banana flavor combinations. And then in level 6, using all that we've learned, students create a new banana recipe that doesn't yet exist, or they improve an existing one. But I really want them to create something that doesn't yet exist. So I hope that was helpful and that you were able to get a lot of helpful tips from that. If you like the video, please do click the like button and subscribe to keep following me on this journey. Good luck with your English teaching and see you next time. Bye.